For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for its analysis of USC's introductory press conference of its two new assistant coaches. We got to talk to offensive line coach Clay McGuire and new tight ends coach Seth Doege. Shotgun, I'm going to start with McGuire first because that was the first guy we got to talk to. At the top, he said it was a great honor to be at USC, especially because he's had time in the Pac-12. He was at Washington State, and he said that it was known in the conference that USC just sets the standard.
Yeah, he said at USC you have the resources and tools that you need to build the best offensive line in the country, and that's what he thinks his goal is coming in. So lofty expectations there. We'll see how they build towards that. They've got to start blocking better, obviously up front, and we'll see if Clay McGuire is the guy that can get them to do that.
A lot was made about the fact that he knows the air raid type schemes, and that way he'll connect better with the offensive staff, with Graham Harrell in particular. What did he have to say about his relationship with Harrell?
Yeah, he said there's a great comfort level, great familiarity with him and Graham Harrell. They've spent, he said, 6, 7, 8 years together. So they know the protection schemes and stuff, that they can bounce ideas off each other a little bit better. And they have a trust factor. It's not a true, he said, a true blue Mike Leach air raid is what he called it. Graham Harrell wants to run the ball more. They're not going to have what he called humongous, wide, throw it every play splits like they had at Washington State. He said the run game is going to look significantly different, but because they have that, they've worked together before, they already have a good idea of where they want to go with that. And one of the things I thought was really interesting that Clay McGuire said is he was talking with Graham Harrell yesterday. They were talking about the run game, and because those guys have been together for multiple years, he said, our most successful teams were the ones that ran the ball really well. So they understand the importance of running the ball and having the run game be a big factor for USC.
Yeah, McGuire mentioned that he wants to install packages for certain situations like goal line situations, short yardage situations. And there was a lot made last season, Shotgun, about USC not going under center. You specifically asked about going under center. What did he have to say?
Yeah, he said that there's a time and place for an under center package, and in certain situations he thinks it definitely helps. So there's going to be conversations with Graham Harrell about potentially having an under package situation and the offensive staff on what they're going to do with the short yardage situations when they're down on the goal line. What are they going to do as they're going through spring camp and developing and putting in they're installing their stuff for this season? That's going to be conversations that they're had. But like you said, he said, because he's gone and worked with Cliff Kingsbury and worked with some other people, he said that, he's learned that you want to create those multiple packages. You want to have be able to create mismatches and situations for success instead of, and I quote right here, instead of banging your head against the wall. So yeah. I don't know if he's referencing just USC last year, because that could be a quote about USC's offensive attack in short yardage situations. But, just instead of doing the same thing over and over and, having little success, which is what happened at USC last year, he says they want to try to do some different things. So we'll see how things kind of develop and adapt with Clay McGuire running the offensive line now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Shotgun, what did you take away from that? Because I feel like in 2020, we got the sense from USC's offensive staff that what they ran at all parts of the field was good. And it seemed like McGuire tried to say, hey, you kind of have to adjust what you're doing where you are locationally on the field.
Yeah, the biggest thing was we just didn't execute. That was always, this goes back, it's harking back for a couple of years to Clay Helton saying, we just had physical beats. No, create some mismatches. Even if you get a guy beat, if you have a wide open receiver, it's going to make it a lot easier to be able to toss a ball out there, even if someone, comes through the offensive line. So using the tight ends with play action, doing some different things like that to create those mismatches, that's something I've been looking for. You can run those goal line plays, but where's the counter off of it? Where's the play action? Where's the different, looks to keep a defense from being, straight lining to where you're going to be running the ball every single time?
Mm-hmm. It's still an interesting time, Shotgun, because they're still in COVID protocol. So it's not like McGuire can get the whole offensive line room together and meet them all at once. It's kind of still different. And he was asked about the group he's inheriting. What did he have to say?
Yeah, he said he's happy with where the room is now. Obviously they're losing Elijah Vera Tucker. Austin Jackson isn't there. There's not those five-star guys, but he says that they've got talent in there, and he said they should have the talent, the size, ability to make some plays. So he thinks the talent pool is not barren or anything going in there. He's going to be looking to add to that, obviously, on the recruiting trail, but he doesn't think that he's coming in and it's, a complete, situation for him when he comes in. So I think he's okay with what there is there. There's plenty of bodies for USC, but he says that there's got to be a mentality change. And I think that's an interesting thing. He said they've got to establish a toughness about the offensive line. They've got to be accountable to all their principles. He wants former USC offensive linemen to watch because he knows there's a tradition at USC. He wants them to watch and say, man, look at how well that group is playing. He talked about Pat Harlow, who's a former USC offensive lineman, who's the coach at JSerra. He says, I want those type of guys to turn on the tape and be proud of how this offensive line is playing. He said, the offensive line needs to lead from the front. It starts with the offensive line. They're not only the biggest group in numbers, he said they're the biggest guys on campus. So they need to be the leaders on this group too. So that's something, we've talked about this for 4 or 5 years about being who's going to step up and be the leader on the offense as a whole. He wants that entire group to kind of step forward and be better leaders.
Yeah, that's at least an encouraging sign that he's identifying that right off the start. So one last thing from McGuire's media availability. It was kind of funny. You could tell there was something happening on his phone and he kind of ignored it and talked through it. And at a certain point, he goes, guys, I'm really sorry, but the coach is calling. Clay Helton is calling and I got to take it. And then the whole media just stood there and just sat there on the Zoom. It was a funny moment, Shotgun.
It was like, what do we do here? Do we wait? Do we stop this whole thing? Should we play some tic-tac-toe? I'm not sure. I felt like that with the Zoom Brady Bunch logo, something should have been going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's like, the boss was calling, so I had to take that one. Which, understandably, your first week or so on the job, you want to take the call whenever the boss is calling.
Of course. Now, after that, we got to talk to new tight ends coach Seth Doege, and he's no stranger to USC. He's been a quality control analyst for the Trojans for the last 2 years, so he knows the campus. He's been recruiting guys who are now a part of USC's team. What did you take away from his media availability, Shotgun?
I mean, the initial thing is the connections there. He's talking about Clay McGuire. He said, I've known this guy for years. And it's true. His dad actually, Daggy said his dad took over the head coaching job right after Clay McGuire was a quarterback in high school. So they're at the same high school, so they go to the same high school together, even though they're not playing at the same time. And then McGuire is the one that actually recruited him to go to Texas Tech. He had finished his playing career and was on the coaching staff there as an assistant, and was the one recruiting Daggy to join. So he talked about how he's a good man and he thinks he's an elite coach, but even a better person. So it's kind of interesting. The connections always follow in college football. That's kind of how it happens. But it's interesting that they've reconnected here at USC and continues that Texas connection. We've talked about it before. We're talking about recruiting. USC adding Brian Carrington on their staff. Hadn't officially announced that one yet, but another Texas guy. So a lot of Texas connections. And this one was one a little bit deeper than we even knew. But I think that they all speak the same language as far as the offense. They all speak it with the same kind of twang as well, Texas drawl. But I think it's unique that there's so many guys on that offensive staff that all speak the same language and speak it in the same tone, and they know what they're wanting to do. So I think that he was excited. He said, we're building a staff here that's going in the right direction, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. I don't know if that means that the staff wasn't in the right direction previously, but they feel confident about where the staff is going and where the team is going.
Mm-hmm. And he also has a connection to Mike Jinks, the running backs coach. He played or coached under him when Mike Jinks was the head coach at Bowling Green. So there's all these connections for all these coaches. Now, obviously, Daggy was asked about the tight ends. So that's a position group that has been underutilized for USC. What do you have to say for his goals for that position group?
He's looking big picture. He's looking for 50 catches, 800 yards from the group. What's interesting is that he wants to factor Drake London in that. Now, he said Drake, he expects to have over 100 catches and 1,200, 1,300 yards. He thinks he can have a huge season, but he thinks Drake London has to be factored into what USC is doing at the tight end position, because that's the Y position that a guy like Jace Amaro, now when Cliff Kingsbury was hired and the tight ends were brought up, this is a guy that I brought up because he won the Mackey Award at Texas Tech under Cliff Kingsbury in his first year there. So he's a guy that they split out and they did a lot of different things to create mismatches. Well, Drake London's playing that position. What Daggy said, though, is maybe we can start, using him as an inline blocker at times, too. Does he become that true flex tight end? And occasionally you bring him in to block down on the line as well. A lot of times when they use Drake London, they'll use some bunch formations. He'll be right on the edge of the line, right outside of a tackle or outside of the tight end, and he'll be used to block there as well. They can do some different things, but that's what he's kind of looking for from the tight end position going forward. He wants a guy like Jace Amaro that can not only catch a bunch of balls like Drake London is doing, but also, put your face on someone, as he put it, block in the line and help out the offensive line in the run game.
And going deeper into the blocking issue, you asked Daggy, how does that get better for that position group? And it seemed like he had already identified why it didn't go necessarily as well as it could have in 2020.
Yeah, we can talk about catches all the time, and people kind of identify how the tight end group is doing by that. But more importantly to USC, in my opinion, is the blocking of the tight ends. They've really struggled. They've been the worst graded group on Pro Football Focus for a couple years now. It's just consistency, and that's what Daggy identified. But he said part of the issue this year was with COVID, they didn't go as hard as they wanted to in practice. They didn't bang as much in practice, is what he said, because you didn't want someone to hurt a shoulder and then you have someone else get COVID and suddenly you're below the minimum number threshold. So there was a lot of concern there. He said they've got to get back to being a little more physical in practice. USC fans, that should be, music chiming in their ears right now. But he said they got to adjust the way they practice as far as how they're going about it with what drills, how they're attacking those drills. Are they going to do it at full speed? Are you doing it at 3/4 speed? Those type of things, but all the type of drills as well. And I think for the tight ends, that means they got to get in there and they got to do some offensive line drills and block a little bit more. So I think that's something that USC fans should be interested to hear. He said there got to be a mentality change in that room. And, he said, hey, everyone looks at us, and especially the recruiting efforts we're doing right now, and it's Hollywood, it's the Boulevard Studios. An interesting quote. He said, there's a dark alley to that Boulevard too, and we've got to be able to go down that alley and get in a fight. So, good quote there from Daggy on his first media availability. But we'll see, all these things. We can hear a lot of great things in the introductory press conferences. Do you follow through with that? We saw that from the defensive side. We were really excited about what they said last year at this time. Now we'll see, and they backed it up. Now we'll see if they can do the same thing with the blocking up front on the offensive side.
Alrighty, Shotgun. Well, any final thoughts? It's kind of interesting where we are positioned right now. We just finished covering USC's National Signing Day. We just had this introductory press conference. If the staff stays the same, this is probably the last introductory press conference we're going to have this off season. So we're kind of in limbo until we get more information about spring practice later down the line.
Yeah, and that spring practice is going to be really critical for this group, especially the two coaches we talked to today. And again, blocking. They need to find that continuity up front on the offensive line and with the tight ends, but they need to get out there and be physical in spring practice, especially, like Daggy talked about how they, kind of pull back because of COVID and worrying about having the appropriate number of players to be able to play. Now it's time to go hard, especially in spring. You had a shorter season. That means you can probably go a little bit harder in the spring practice than you do normally, because you're going to have less. You have 14 guys coming in for one. So more bodies there for the early enrollees, but also you have less guys that probably haven't off-season surgeries and stuff. So I think you're going to have more guys available. And I think they really need to press hard this spring to really try to take that offense to another level, especially up front. So I think that spring is really important for them. We're kind of left in limbo waiting to see if we're going to be able to cover spring practice. But as far as the coaches, I think they should really be putting together a plan where they're going to go, extremely hard spring. Every practice should be a practice where players are looking back and like, man, is it going to get worse than this? This is tough. And I don't think that's always been the case under Clay Helton at USC.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's introductory press conference. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.